Pues esta es la situación en Londres. Por eso mi hermano no ha querido alejarse demasiado y ha decidido enviar a la familia a la costa.
No entiendo tales premuras ni...
Comprenda que en estos momentos las cosas son diferentes a como eran en sus tiempos, señor Wouters.
Yo mismo he encontrado demasiada agitación en mi reciente viaje a Londres.
Por lo visto, solo va quedando paz aquí, en el campo. Por esto su hermano debía considerar la posibilidad de venirse a vivir a Hartfield con Isabela y con los niños. Así no estaría yo siempre languideciendo por ver a mi pobre hija.
Mi querido señor Wouters, el matrimonio crea nuevas familias y separa a los hijos de los padres. Es la regla.
Es la regla, es una regla extravagante. Si al menos hubiesen decidido venir a pasar aquí el verano. A la costa. Irse a la costa. Vale, yo nunca he tenido buena opinión del aire del mar.
Pues Winefield, el médico de mi hermano, dice que le sentará muy bien a los niños y sobre todo a la garganta de Belle, la pequeña.
Y por el contrario, el señor Perry, mi médico, el que me ha cuidado desde siempre, e hizo posible la boda de su hermano con mi hija, puesto que salvó la vida de la pobre Isabela en más de una ocasión, tiene una opinión muy desfavorable sobre el mar.
Les suplico que no hablen más del mar. Me hace sentirme envidiosa.
¿Sabe, señor Wouters, que he estado hablando con la señorita Bates y que me ha dicho que es muy probable que su sobrina vuelva pronto a Highbury?
Sí, Jane Fairfax, excelente muchacha. Su hermano debe reconocer que en Londres la estación es mala. Si nadie está saludable en Londres.
Es una curiosa polémica.
No sea usted demasiado mordaz, señor Elton. La salud de mi familia es un tema precioso para nosotros.
Cualquier cosa que sea preciosa para usted, lo es también para mí.
No sé si es exactamente cierto lo que dice.
Estoy seguro de que no lo duda.
No esté tan seguro, señor Elton. Hoy todos hemos echado de menos a mi íntima amiga, la señorita Smith.
Pues sí, es cierto. Su ausencia es lo único que empaña un poco nuestra alegría.
¿Le entristece su ausencia solo porque a mí me entristece? Eso puede ser galante, pero no leal.
Yo siempre le he sido leal, señorita Wouters.
No hablaba de su lealtad hacia mí, sino hacia Harry.
Señor Elton, ¿ha visto usted las nuevas adquisiciones del capitán?
Pues sí. ¿Me ha hablado de ellas?
Pues debe usted verlas. Le interesarán mucho.
Venga, se las enseñaré. Supongo que usted habrá visto algo parecido en sus viajes a Londres, pero para nosotros provincianos...
¿De qué se trata?
De dos monedas muy valiosas, nuevas adquisiciones del capitán Weston. Y al señor Elton le interesa mucho todo lo valioso.
No sé si interpretarlo como un elogio hacia mí o como un reproche al señor Elton, del que siempre había tenido usted la mejor opinión.
Las opiniones pueden y deben cambiar a través del conocimiento.
También en eso estoy en desacuerdo.
Nuestras diferencias, Emma, nacen siempre
de que yo estoy equivocada.
Tenga usted en cuenta que le llevo una gran ventaja. Yo ya tenía 12 años cuando usted nació.
Una diferencia importante. Y no dudo que en aquel tiempo su juicio era superior al mío, pero desde entonces aquí han pasado más de 20 años.
Sí, más de 20 años.
Que según usted no son suficientes para darme oportunidad de tener razón en los asuntos en que nuestra opinión no coincide.
De todas formas, siempre le llevaré la ventaja de esos 12 años. Y además, el de no ser como usted una niña mimada y bonita. Emma, hagamos las paces. Si no ha estado equivocada antes, puede estarlo ahora, manteniendo el rencor.
Por mi parte, la paz. Una pregunta. Desearía que el joven Martin no estuviese demasiado dolido por la negativa.
Lo está tanto como un hombre enamorado puede estarlo.
Lo siento.
Bien. Basta de hacerles esperar. La cena está servida.
Perfecto.
Vamos,
Gracias.
Creo que le prepararon un montón de
vale.
que más lejos.
Williams, take Mary up to the nursery, will you?
Very good, Miss Woodhouse.
Hello, Bella.
Henry! John, go up to your rooms at once. Take off your coats and wash your hands. When you have brushed your hair properly, you may come down again. And no horseplay in the passages, mind.
No, Pa.
My child, my poor child, what a terrible journey you must have had. And the baby. What has happened to the baby?
It is all right, Papa. Mary has taken her upstairs.
Oh, John, my dear fellow, how are you? How are
Tolerably
you?
well, thank you, Mr. Woodhouse, considering I've just been shut up for a couple of hours with those two young hooligans of
And the
ours.
boys, where are the boys? Poor little fellows, they must be exhausted after their journey, I'm sure. Come in.
So exhausted we could scarcely hear ourselves speaking, Brother John.
And get yourselves warm.
Father, it's so good to be back. Yet, as I was saying to Emma, Hartfield hardly seems the same somehow without dear Miss Taylor.
And Mrs. Weston.
Poor Miss Taylor. Yes, that was a grievous business indeed. Most grievous.
But you see her often still, I hope.
No, hardly ever. It is most sad.
Oh, Papa, she has been here every day but once since they came home.
Oh, has she? Well, if you say so, I suppose, but she is always obliged to go away again.
Oh, never mind. You will all be meeting very shortly because Mr. and Mrs. Weston and Mr. Knightley are dining with us this evening.
Thank you, Williams. In the drawing room, are they?
Yes, sir, excepting Miss Woodhouse.
Oh, and where is Miss Emma?
Upstairs, sir, in the nursery with the baby.
Is she? Thank you, Williams.
Just one moment, please. You may come in now, Mr. Knightley.
I was told that you were up here. May I see her?
There. Is she not a pretty girl? Is she not a beauty? Say good evening to your Uncle Knightley, miss. Say good evening.
Good evening, little Emma. She is one thing that we have in common, you and I.
What a comfort it is we think alike about our nephews and nieces, Mr. Knightley. As to our opinions of men and women, they do not always quite coincide. But on the subject of children, that is never the case.
If your judgment of men and women were as sound as it is where children are concerned, then we should never disagree.
So our disagreements must always arise from my being in the wrong, I see, Mr. Knightley. Is that so?
Yes, it would appear so, Emma.
Indeed.
But the reason is not far to seek. I was 16 years old when you were born.
Oh, I've no doubt as to your being very much my superior in judgment then, Mr. Knightley, I grant you. But that was 21 years ago, remember. Circumstances have altered a little since those days.
Yes, but I still have the advantage of 16 years' experience, don't forget. And by not being a pretty, overindulged young woman. Oh, come, my dear Emma. Let us be friends again. Little Emma, you tell your aunt that she ought to be setting you a better example than by renewing old grievances, and that if she weren't wrong before, then she is now, eh?
That is true. Very true. There, little Emma, you grow up a better woman than your aunt. be much cleverer and not half so conceited.
Emma, be careful, the baby. It might have an infection.
John, this may be the finest Knightley yet.
Thank you.
You and Isabella should have brought her sooner. And she looks so fetching in the arms of her aunt.
Yes, don't they make a splendid pair?
The journey from London, how was it?
If you accepted adults with as little whim as you do these children, we might always agree.
How fascinating that any discordancy between us must always arise from my being wrong.
Not fascinating, but true. Perhaps it has something to do with the gap in our ages. I was 16 years old when you were born.
Undoubtedly you were my superior then, but hasn't the lapse of 21 years closed the gap?
Narrowed it. Come, dear, let us be friends and quarrel no more.
Very well. And might I say that we were both right as far as good intentions went. I only hope Mr. Martin was not too disappointed.
No man could be more so.
I'm very sorry. Come. Shake hands with me.
Dinner is served.
Good. John?
Sister dear, when shall we meet your new friend, Miss Smith?
She will be with us on Friday at the Westons' Christmas Eve party. It looks as though it will be a very rewarding holiday for her.
Run for your uncle as fast as you can. Fee-fi-po-fum! Yeah!
Oh, Papa is distressed.
Well, well, that'll do. No more. Take him away, Betty. Off with them, Jane. No more. Say good night to your grandpapa, sir.
My little Emma should stay a while.
Ah, she makes no noise. You look well thus, Emma.
Good night. Good night.
Now then, sir, shall we take you, your little horse, to bed? Yes, we will, sir. Yes, we will. Night, night, sir.
I remember holding you thus once upon a time.
You and I must not be enemies.
No. You may do wrong, and I may be angry with you, but you and I shall never be enemies.
You forget that I have not been proved wrong. But I do hope that Mr. Martin is not very disappointed.
A man could not be more so.
Then indeed I am very sorry.
No, Isabella, there is no avoiding it. Mr. and Mrs. Weston have invited me, and we must go. Christmas Eve or not, whatever the weather. She is a bride, and the visit must be paid, I do believe, whatever the consequences.
You too, Bella.
Yes, come along, children. We must all do as your aunt says.
We play again tomorrow, Uncle George.
Quietly now. Right, Henry. And don't be late for dinner. You know what your grandpa was like.
Uncle George, please.
You look pale, Henry. It's a great pity that you went to the sea in the autumn and did not come here.
But why should you think so, Papa?
Mr. Knightley.
I assure you it did the children a great deal of good.
You have to go to the sea and not come here, where the air is purest. Dr. Perry agrees. Then you should have chosen Cromer rather than Southend. It is an unhealthy place.
Excuse me. Dr. Wingfield.
It's a London doctor. We all know London is the unhealthiest place of all to live in.
Brunswick Square has the clearest air in the capital. Dr. Wingfield has said so. It has been scientifically proven. And he recommended the sea air for all the children.
Come, come. Don't let's talk about the seaside. You know I have never been there. Makes me so miserable and envious to think you have seen the sea and your poor old aunt has not.
Dr. Perry was a week at Cromer and said it was the best sea bathing place of all, if you must go.
But Cromer is so very much farther than Southend, 100 miles instead of 40.
But where health is at stake, this is what Perry said. He said it seems best not to go at all.
Dr. Perry would do well to keep his opinions to himself. Why is it any of his business where I take my family on holiday? If Dr. Perry can tell me how to convey a wife and 5 children a distance of 130 miles with no greater expense or inconvenience than 40...
Oh, John, do you remember the rerouting of the path into Highbury? Well, an added advantage is that it takes us very near to Randalls. We could walk there tomorrow, visit the new Mrs. Weston.
Poor Miss Taylor. We hardly ever see her now.
Father, we have only missed seeing them one day since they were married. If only we could resolve our quarrels as well as we resolve those disputes within our family, we could be friends again.
If only you were as sensible with those outside the family and not subject them to your fancy, we would never disagree.
Ah, of course. And I am always in the wrong.
Well, I was your considerable superior in years when you were the age of little Emma here.
And I am sure that you were by far my superior in judgment when I was. But surely we have grown closer in judgment as the years have passed.
Well, I had the advantage of not being a pretty woman and a spoilt child. Come, let's be friends, and say no more about it. Tell your aunt, little Emma, not to renew old grievances.
Very true, little one. Grow up to be a far better woman than your aunt. Be infinitely cleverer and not so conceited. But I must ask one more thing. As far as good intentions go, we were both right. I cannot claim to be sorry that Harriet took my advice, but I would like to know that Mr. Martin is not so very bitterly disappointed.
I cannot satisfy you there. I've never seen a man more disappointed.
Glad tidings of
You, it is your responsibility and your responsibility to teach the baby to drink milk without spilling it all over my favourite trouser.
Emma, they're here.
That was unendurable.
Husband, comport yourself. Papa.
Elizabeth. I shall always be sorry you went to the sea this autumn instead of coming here.
But why should you be sorry, sir? It did us a great deal of good.
On the contrary, Mr. John Knightley looks far from well.
Southend was strenuously recommended by our physicians.
Sea air and sea bathing.
The sea is rarely of use to anybody. It nearly killed me once.
Come. I must beg you not to speak of the sea.
Makes me miserable. And envious. I who have never seen it.
Mr. Wingfield specified that Southend was the best place to go for the family.
Perhaps you should change your physician.
He was recommended by my husband.
Chroma might have been forgiven.
Let us be friends. Tell your aunt, little Emma, that she was very wrong and she ought to set you a better example.
What is the matter? Is there fever? Where is the nurse? Pardon me. I do not know. I do not know. Where is the nurse?
Send for Perry.
Do not send for Perry.
Send for Perry.
As death follows life,
As far as good intentions went, we were both in the right. I must admit I have not yet been proved wrong. Mr. Knightley. Was Mr. Martin very disappointed?
A man cannot be more so.